Okay, welcome everyone to this very exciting workshop that we've got with Glenn from the Flow Agency. Glenn is a good friend of mine. We've known each other for a while in the no-code space, and today he's going to be talking about all his magical skills in Airtable, Webflow, and Integromat, and how you can kind of mix and match them together so they're kind of greater than the sum of their parts. So yeah, really excited for this. Yeah, Glenn has done some awesome stuff in the no-code space, and he'll be showing you hopefully a slice of that today. So yeah, we're gonna have some questions at the end if throat permitting, lemsit permitting. And yeah, I'll pass over to you, Glenn, to get us off.
Thank you, Max. Very kind. Hello, everyone. Well, I'll just jump straight in with sharing a screen, and let's just go to here. There we go. As we always do, just checking. Everyone can see that? I'm
Yes.
sharing the full screen. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Perfect.
So I'm not going to do a great big PowerPoint thing. It's nobody wants that. All I'm doing is just setting the scene a little bit here. So I've just got just a few slides. And really, what we do, or what I do predominantly at the agency, is work with clients on their projects, trying to get their ideas launched. There's a lot of MVP work, proof of concepts, startup type work. And what we need to do is introduce them to, quite often, a set of tools. Now, you guys might already know these tools. Shout out if you don't at any point there's any kind of confusion over it. This is, I would say, the level of this is about intermediate level. So I want to start off slow, but I really do want to get into some more meatier aspects, because what I find is that there's a lot of beginner material out there, and not necessarily sort of slightly higher stuff, which actually is really useful to know. So I want to share that with you. And even though we could do questions at the end, quite happy to do that. If you want to shout out, Max, I don't know what your format usually is, but I'm quite happy for people to call out and interrupt, because I quite like the collaborative sort of element of it, especially when there's confusion around something and my head is not as clear as it usually is. So by all means, stop me. But yeah, Airtable, Integromat, and Webflow. The reason I've got those three is because Airtable and Integromat we use on a lot of projects. Webflow is our front end of choice, but you could almost swap out Webflow for almost any front end with the work that we'll be talking about. So I just want to clarify that this isn't all about Webflow. And the reason why easier is in green and bold is because I really do believe that's the purpose of this, rather than trying to make our lives harder by going down rabbit holes and getting really complicated with stuff. If you know some key concepts, you can approach pretty much any no-code project with those key concepts and build it. And even though visually it might look difficult to some people when they first see it, if you know what's going on under the hood, it's actually not that complicated, and it's just about building blocks, really. So I'm going to dive into this presentation anyway. So from my side, automation and integration really is all about capturing data, manipulating it, channeling it to where it needs to go, analyzing it, and sharing it. So those are the sort of key areas of what you're doing with it. With no code, you're hidden from a lot more of the complexity that you would normally need to engage with because of code or manual processes. But no code actually hides you from some of that. But despite that, it is still all about data, and we have to remember that. And if you're putting rubbish data into a system, you're going to get rubbish out. Okay, so I think it is about honoring what's good and kind of good practices of data and processes. Some people are really happy about the fact they're working with data. Other people, it sends them to sleep. But the nice thing about our no-code tools is that the nitty-gritty of the data is mostly glossed over. It's more about just actually the processes. Quick stat for you, just to know what we're all aiming for here. There'll be more than 500 million digital apps and services by 2023, according to the IDC. That's the same number of apps developed in the last 40 years in total. So yeah, we all know, but there's an explosion of this going on. And we just have to be able to move fast, right? Because people are busy and they need to get stuff done. So first key concept I want to introduce you to, if you don't already know this, is this idea of three main layers: front end, back end, and a middle bit. And really, most no-code solutions fall into this. Even if you're working within Bubble and only in Bubble or some other program, you're generally dealing with these three things. Front end in our case today, Webflow, back end Airtable, middle bit Integromat. And I never quite know what to call the middle bit because some people call it middleware, some people call it the automation layer. It kind of does a lot. There's a lot of logic wrapped up in there, a lot of manipulation of the data, etc. So I'm still looking for a good thing to call that middle layer, but I call it the middle bit. In addition to those three layers, we've got these, again, what I call satellite services. So this is all the rest of the stuff surrounding what you're working on. Some of those services might supply related data to your solution. They might enrich or augment your data. These are sometimes third-party services completely outside of your main layers, or they may be mini services actually that you've got available to you within that middle layer typically, but also in the back end as well quite often. So those are sort of key concepts to bear in mind. So let's get into it. The use case I wanted to tackle today is, first and foremost, is subscription forms. Right? Everybody ends up creating a form at some point, whether it's a contact form or a subscribe to our newsletter form. So this is a classic case of form on the front end, submitting that data, manipulating it somehow or capturing it somehow, and then putting it somewhere behind the scenes. For those who don't know, this is Integromat. We are in a scenario designer. It's like a canvas which allows us to drag our various actions, triggers and actions around. If you know Zapier, similar kind of thing. It works left to right. So we have some kind of trigger event that happens on the left, and then it works slowly, bit by bit over towards the right. In this one, we've only got two modules. A trigger and an action, whereas in future ones we'll have many more of these. But let's start small. So in this one, we've got a Webflow form, and we are waiting for that form to be submitted. So we have what Integromat call or Webflow call watching events, and it's watching for that form to be submitted. I won't go into more detail than that now, but it will happen immediately. So as soon as that form is submitted, that trigger fires. Okay, we'll come back to that. When that happens, it then communicates with ConvertKit to say, I'm going to add the subscriber that I've just grabbed from that form and put it inside ConvertKit. And again, I don't want to go into details, but it puts their email address in and it puts their first name in, and any data that's available to me via that initial trigger is now accessible here, so we can do something with it. And that's about the most basic scenario, as Integromat calls them, that you can do. You can barely do anything more basic than that. Okay. Anybody shout out if that's already sort of causing alarm bells, but I'm expecting everybody to be okay with that, and you've probably already done it. Okay. Moving on to the next bit, rather than capturing into ConvertKit, what if we decided that we wanted to introduce some kind of CRM, or at least a back-end database, which is going to capture all of our data first? And I'm encouraging people all the time to do this, is try not to think of putting data straight into your other services. Try and capture it first and then do something with it. So in this case, it's doing the same capture, but it's identifying the particular form by its name, and Webflow allows you to name your forms. And then it's putting that data into an Airtable record. So I'll give you an example case, okay? If this is a website I'm currently working with Roger Farley, if anybody knows Roger, and this is what he calls his digital playground. So this is all the things he's really interested in. And one of the most important things is capturing people's email addresses, getting them into his newsletter. So you'll see here that I've already got my name in there. You'll see here that this is first name, last name, email address. Please sign me up, which is a tick box, and the button. So again, if we were to do that and we were to run that Integromat automation, it'll grab it and put it straight into this table here. Can everybody see that table okay? I can zoom in a little bit maybe. Basically, it's like almost like a dumping ground for that information. And of course, once it's in there, we can augment it in lots of different ways. We can assign a membership to them, their status, whether it's okay to email them or not. all kinds of other information that we might want to capture either now or in the future. So it's set up as our what we call our single source of truth, and it's ready to actually work with in whatever capacity you need to work with it. And the example I'm going to look at today with you is this idea of OK to email, because when people subscribe, obviously they subscribe via a form, but then they can unsubscribe, which actually goes directly to the mailing service like ConvertKit, or you may want to unsubscribe them and you might want to do it from your Airtable CRM. So you've got multiple places where you might unsubscribe somebody. And then what happens when somebody decides to resubscribe? How do you handle that? So these different ways of somebody engaging with you and your solution and their data, updating their data, that can happen in multiple ways, and we need to be able to cope with that. So moving one step forward, if we were to now say, okay, so we're putting our Webflow data into our Airtable database, and actually what we want to do is do two things. First off, we want to check to see whether that person exists already, because we don't want to keep adding them with a new record, because we might already know who they are. And this is where this single source of truth comes in, because if we do already know who they are, if I just zoom in a little bit, so I do a search based on that email address they've submitted, I can now say, right, if the user's not found, they're not going to be in any of my other satellite services, because this is my hub. So if they're not found, I'm going to create them a new record and I'm going to add them to ConvertKit, and actually I'm also going to invite them to the Circle community at the same time. So this is just a simple flow that Roger and I have been working on, and it will get more complex over time. If they are found, and there's an otherwise path here, so this router is basically saying, try this path, and if that doesn't work, go down this path. That's all that's doing. It's going to update them because it's found them. So I'll add their new details in the form to their existing record, and then I'll update their entry in ConvertKit as well. And I may decide to do something else, like contact them to say, I can see that you signed up again. That's great, but blah, 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 blah. And you can actually communicate them with in a different way. Or they might be filling in a different form, not the subscriber form, and you need to know that. So we know which form they've submitted, we know who they are already, we can communicate with them differently, okay? So that's introduced a couple of things. The router, which is really, really useful. A search module, which allows us to look up already in Airtable, and these paths to go down. The last thing I want to just show you very quickly here is the fact that we don't just create a record for them as a person in the database. We can also do other things at the same time. And a concept we've got going on here is this idea of a log table. So that person has basically come in via the source of alwaysinvert.com. The source is a particular form, source app and source, and then the log type is a newsletter sign up. So we're starting to now track activity at a bit more of a granular level. So we couldn't really do this if we were going straight into ConvertKit. We don't have the capacity in that program to do that, but we can do it here. And this is great because we can now build up a profile over time of that person and how much they're engaging with our brand or our solution. Okay, that's all I really want to say there. I'm going to move on to, first of all, just quick check-in. Is everybody okay with that? Has anybody got any questions on any of that so far? I don't want to surge ahead.
I can see good thumbs up and nodding, so all good.
Excellent, good, thank you. So moving on to another example, this is a client of ours called Craft Central. They're based in London. They, as it says here, they have creative workspaces for rent. They do other things as well. They have a gallery. You can run an event there if you want to, and you can become a member, what's called a network member, and you pay £51 a year to become a network member. So we'll come to the membership bit in a minute, but let's just say we're going to apply for a studio. So we hop down to that form, and we'd fill in this form and submit it. Now, again, we've got an Airtable base behind the scenes, which captures those inquiries via a table called tickets. But I'm not going to go into that just now. What I do want to talk about is the fact we have the same idea of people central to the whole thing. And whenever somebody makes an inquiry, we can record that inquiry, that ticket, uh, against their people record. So again, it will do that via email address. It's not looking at any kind of user ID or anything like that. It's purely going by email address. And yeah, and we can start to actually record things like that. So that's a simple example of another form which isn't a newsletter subscriber. It's just an inquiry type form, and there are about 8 different forms on this website. So the next thing, if I hop to this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, in fact. So what I wanted to show you here is how these scenarios in Integromat can grow as you add more and more to them. Now, this one's actually much more straightforward than it looks, because all it is a repeat, really, of that chunk of modules there. So you can see them all just highlighted. Really, it's just a repeat of that as you go further down the router. And this is because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 forms, and we want to handle each form submission differently. So that's the contact us form, that's the support form, this is the event hosting inquiry form, etc. Okay, so the complexity isn't really in the fact that you've got multiple paths, and we could have put each of those paths into their own scenario. But what's handy is we can put them all in one, and then just watch for any form submission. This is one of my tips I'm giving today. Watch for any form submission, and because you know the name of that form, you go down that particular path. So rather than having lots and lots of scenarios, you can put them all into one. I don't know whether people use Zapier or other tools, but there's a tendency to not want to build really large zaps or large kind of automations because they get complex. In Integromat world, there are people that produce scenarios that have up to hundreds of these modules all in one flow. So it's a very different kind of approach when you start using Integromat, that you can really go wild and the system can cope. And if it makes sense to go a bit wild, and I'll show you an example of that later, then you can do it. You don't have to worry about it. The only worry is that if you overcomplicate it with too many of these modules, it can actually start increasing the cost, because the more modules that are there and the more that run, the larger the cost. So just bear that in mind.
Glenn,
So yeah,
just a question. Well, not a question, but Tony kind of pointed out that I can only imagine the error handling needed for this one. Is that kind of true in terms of? I can just imagine there's just more things that can go wrong the more modules you've got. But is that something that you find that there is a lot of error handling to do in this kind of situation?
you know, surprisingly no, and I'll tell you why. I mean, as I say, first of all, you're really only dealing with that. Think of it just like that, right? Because any one run of this automation will just be concerned with one path. So that's the first thing that's sort of easier to think about. So you can forget the rest. The second thing is, my view is, build these things without error handlers. Watch what happens over time and see what tends to fail for you, and then build in error handlers for that. So it's other people will say differently. Always have it in right from the beginning, but I do find that does complicate the picture, and most of the time it's unnecessary. My experience rather is that the kind of errors that you get are generally communication errors. These are server to server API type errors where there's a timeout or something like that. And Integromat kind of handles those quite well anyway, without having to add extra handlers. And when it does go wrong and it turns off the automation, say, because it just hasn't managed to succeed for a few attempts, you also get told about that, and then you can go in and figure out what the problem is. So error handling is one of those things that, how mission critical is it? How deep do you want to go down that particular rabbit hole, and is it worth it? And most of the time, a lot of the time, I would say it's not worth it. Having said that, I do like adding them for certain modules. So where you see something like HTTP module where you're handling an API request that's not one of these native modules, I do tend to put error handlers on those because they're harder to monitor the responses when you haven't got error handlers. Does that make sense?
Perfect. Yeah, thanks. Thanks so much.
Okay, cool. So with this one, the example of this one is, again, we do a lookup to say, is it a new person or a known person? If they're new, what we're actually going to do is create, this is a membership, this is the ticketing kind of route. We're going to create them as a person in Outsetter. So this is the membership platform that we were looking at here. I didn't want to go into it too much, but Outsetter's handling all of the membership. And it also handles the fact that they may not be paying members, but they may be making an inquiry. So we're already creating an account for them in Outsetter before they've even become a member, if you like. So we're using Outsetter in multiple ways. And then we create a ticket, what they call a case. We handle a bit of information there, and then we create the ticket and the person in Airtable. So rather than doing it towards the beginning, this time we actually did it at the end. And the reason being is obviously this is sequential, left to right, yeah? So once we create a new person in Outsetter, we're going to want to record the unique IDs back in the database. So where you have here an Outsetter account ID or a person ID or both, we want to be able to record that back in our system. And the reason why that's handy is because you can create things like this, where you can click on you can build a link with a formula, click on that link, and then go straight into their account in Outsetter. So again, building up a CRM here, as opposed to flipping between systems and trying to figure out what's going on all over the place. That makes sense. Quickly moving on. What if Craft Central use MailerLite for their emailing? What if somebody was to unsubscribe, as I said earlier, in MailerLite? We need to be able to update our Airtable base to say that they've unsubscribed. And that's really easy to do. So you watch a subscriber activity. It's an immediate trigger. You search for that person in your Airtable base, and then you update them in Airtable. And one of the things I wanted to show you here is you've got these ideas of filters where you were talking about error handling, Max. One of the nice things about filters is you can say only move on to the next step if these conditions are met. So I call them logic conditions. And in this case, because it's done a search, if it doesn't find somebody in Integromat, it will say, Integromat uses this idea of bundles. It will say that there are no bundles. It hasn't found a match. So our logic conditions say, don't try and work with this particular unsubscribe action unless you can find that person in your search. So the total number of bundles needs to be greater than 0. Also, the subscribe to emails field in your Airtable base needs to not equal no. And the reason being is because if you've already got them as no in the Airtable base, you don't want to update it again, because that might trigger an action to try and go and unsubscribe them in MailerLite. So you end up in this infinite loop, theoretically, where it's doing one and then it's doing the other and then it's sending it to the other and going backwards and forwards ad infinitum, right? So at some point you have to have some kind of break which stops that from happening. So that's a little tip, again, just to stop that infinite loop happening, if anybody's come across that. And then the other way around, what if you decide to change that OK to email field in your base so the OK to email is now no, it's not OK to email them. Maybe they've just phoned up and complained. You've changed it in your base. And with this one, it does it the other way around. So we've got some logic conditions. We check that the email address exists and the subscribe to emails exists. It's not blank. That's just a little bit of a check there. And if so, we go ahead, we search for them in MailerLite. If you find a match, you go down this route here. And you can see how all of these concepts are just repeats of what we've done previously in simpler scenarios. but you're just building up a slightly more complex picture. So none of this is new. We've seen this already. So we found a match, total number of bundles greater than 0. And we can then decide to either resubscribe them, because the value in our base is subscribe to emails equals yes. So that's now a resubscribe type of activity, or an unsubscribe activity. And we just handle that separately, because there's very specific things you need to do if you're going to resubscribe. And what I mean by that is, when we add the subscriber to a group, we need to make use of the resubscribe option in MailerLite to yes. So there's, again, I don't know whether people have handled email lists. Max, you must have done, and this can be a real nightmare. Just trying to keep on top of people's subscription status is a mission, can be a mission. And this is what we're trying to achieve here with a very simple, overall, a very simple automation. Okay. Next one I want to have a look at is membership. So when somebody decides to become a network member at Craft Central, they go to choose a plan, and there's only one plan at the moment that they have, and it's this annual network membership. So again, we may or may not know this person. What if they're already a member and they go to sign up for some weird reason? They want to pay twice, they've forgotten, I don't know. So again, we need to account for that. Well, first of all, what we do is, with this one, rather than trying to capture this form as a Webflow form, it's not actually a Webflow form, it's an Outsetter form. So this is now a widget that particular program gives us, and we need to be able to capture the data then from within that tool, okay? So in our case, let's say they successfully go through that process, they've now created an account. And again, you'll see that the trigger type here is immediate. And my advice is, another tip here to make your life easier, is as often as possible, always try and make the trigger immediate. And in order to do that, you have to look sometimes a little bit deeper into these tools. So I'll tell you what I mean by that. Over here, we have this, we have this notifications option in Outsetter, and a lot of good systems have this, that allow you to actually create what they call a webhook. Now, they haven't called it webhook here, but that's what this is. And you can choose the particular activity that goes on in this system. So let's say a person created, account created, whatever it is. And then you can assign a webhook URL or a callback URL. And that's something that, again, Zapier and Integromat give you as an option. Really, really powerful. Has anybody here not heard of webhooks, or heard of them but not used them?
Yeah, a couple, I think Shay and Krishna. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So on that score, I recommend digging into it. Whatever program it is, the programs you're using, have a look at this kind of functionality. And just to very quickly show you what it means. When that account's been created, I need to go to send data to this URL, this webhook URL. And that's actually set up over here, if I could find the right one, over here in Integromat itself. So you create it first, you grab that address, copy address to clipboard, and then back over in your system here, you add it as your callback URL or your webhook URL. You'll find things like Softer, and I think Glide has webhooks as well. Yeah, it does. And all other kinds of tools that you'll use all tend to have this in there, but it's always touted as advanced, as an advanced thing that you only get to much later in life. Do yourself a favor and learn it earlier in life, because they're incredible and they save yourself a lot of time and headache. So when you've got that set up, what that means is, as soon as they've created an account, this fires and I'm off, right? So I look up that person again in the base, person exists, do something there, new person, go down this route. I'm going to create their billing address based on the details they put in to the Outsetter widget. I'm going to look to see whether the billing address is the same as the mailing address, so you can really start to see that I've got some logic going on here now, so that I'm capturing that data and manipulating it in the way that I want. Because over in my base, I don't want to duplicate an address just because it's billing and mailing. I want to actually say it's the same address, and this is the billing, and this is, so that's that kind of work you could do there. And then also, because they've just created an account, I want to add them to the newsletter. So we go down this route and do that again. And again, in these situations, the client for this one, just to show you a good example, hasn't really decided what to do if that subscriber is already found in MailerLite. So if somehow they're already in there, maybe they've signed up to the newsletter and then they become a member, the organization really needs to figure out how they want to handle the communication with that person. And that's what this route is waiting for. That is that organizational decision and logic. Whereas if they're new, that's easy. Just add them to the group and they'll get put into a sequence and they're welcomed and all the rest of it. So you can leave these things blank, but I like to add them as what's called a stub, and then you know that it's there waiting for something to be filled in. And it doesn't cause any harm just being there without anything added. Okay? All with me so far?
Yep. Good.
Yeah, fire questions if anybody has it. The next part of this, I'm dwelling on this particular website because there's lots of interesting aspects to this particular project, which I think are helpful. I've signed up, I'm a member. I'm using Outsetter's features. I can now look up here in the top right and I've got a profile, I can log out, and this is my profile form. So I can update my details here. And one of the things I want to do is send through a profile image, which is the main image that's going to show when if I just quickly show you, it's this image here that shows when I actually add myself. I want to tell you what image I want to have in my profile, okay? So I can fill that in here. And one of the things, I don't know whether there are Webflow people here, but one of the things that Webflow does, for example, is it restricts your ability to use an image upload or a file upload feature until you're on one of the more expensive plans, which is a little bit mean, but we can work around it. So this is a workaround. We've got that same feature in place, but this time we're bypassing the need to have that in Webflow, and we're using a service called getform.io, getform.io. And this is a great little tool which will basically just capture your form submission data. So again, any front end, doesn't matter what the front end is, this can capture that data, and then you can decide what do you want to happen once that data's been captured. So in our case, again, over to our trusty automation environment, we've got a trigger, obviously, because I'm obsessive about them, which will trigger immediately, and it's looking for a new submission in getForm. Again, there's your webhook URL, and it's going to say, okay, I've found a new submission. I'm just going to grab all the details, including the image, and this is where you get a little bit more advanced. I don't know whether anybody uses these kinds of API requests. Anybody builds these up themselves or has experience with this here, but Integromat makes it really easy for you. You use the API documentation of the tool that you're trying to integrate, getForm in this case. You follow the instructions, and you grab that, and you actually then go and do what you need to do with it. So this one is a query to say, go and get that information for me, including the image, and then do something with it. So what I'm doing with it is I'm actually doing a little bit of data manipulation. Again, this can scare people. Please don't let it scare you. This is a regex module, which allows me to just check whether they've put in HTTP or HTTPS / at the beginning of the web address that they put in the form. I do the same for the Twitter address they put in, the Facebook address they put in, and the Instagram address they put in. That's all that's doing. And then once it's done that manipulation, it will create the strings that are necessary that I want to actually capture. So what I'm doing there is I'm assuming that people are going to put all kinds of different variations of their Twitter handle, etc., into that form. And rather than force them to do it in a certain way at the form level, I'm actually just going to take what I've been given and manipulate it behind the scenes. I'm going to do the job for them, basically. That works 9 times out of 10. Even still, things get through. Like people will put in 2 different Instagram accounts in one field, stuff like that. But mostly it works. Yep, and then we carry on. So we've updated that form, sent up an image. We've if an image exists already against a particular member, then it will go down this route. If an image doesn't exist already, it will go down this route. And this is a really subtle one. It's to do with the fact that when you go to update a record with Airtable with an image, it's actually easier to do 2 different routes, whether you do have an image that you need to work with or you don't have an image to work with. And it's just to do with the way Airtable complains if you say you're giving it an image and there isn't actually one there at all. It's a little workaround I use. It doesn't mean doubling up on your paths like this, but again, it's just a tip. Just people come across that, I find that's the way around that one. So it updates them in the Airtable base, and it updates their same details in their Outsetter membership area as well. So I want to specifically look at the image now, and this is, I think, my final one I want to show you. Probably one of the more advanced features here is they've sent you up an image, could be this one here, and you don't know whether that image is too small, too large, what its image dimensions are. Is it 5 megabytes big? You don't know any of that. At this stage, you've just got a source image. And we want to make sure that our images that go to the website are optimized, because otherwise it will slow the site down and all that kind of thing. So what this view does, optimize main images view in Airtable, is it allows us to push a source image through an optimization flow. And what I mean by that is I'm trying to produce a main image card of a particular set of dimensions and a main image highlight, which is much bigger, but of the same image. So 2 different images for the Webflow website. So if we can identify that there are images to optimize, and that's because of the fact that we have a thumb next to those images, then what we're going to do is grab it, check the date, do something with it, grab the source images. So you actually kind of grab the URL and almost turn it into a binary in memory. It's like grabbing it so that you can work with it. You then extract the image metadata. So you need to know what the size of it is, basically. And it's a really simple process, that one. And then we use one of these satellite services called Convert API. And all this is doing is it's saying, I want to create a version of that image at 1200 pixels wide and another one at 800 pixels wide. So just to show you what the options are in here, JPEG, there's the file that we're working with. I want it to be 72 pixels in terms of DPI. I'm going to scale it proportionately so that it doesn't squash. The width is the one that I set, and then it can set whatever height it wants. And I'm going to set the image quality at 60%. So this is and I'm going to store the file. So this is an amazing little process that I can use to change that image or create 2 versions of that image. And then once that's successfully done, it's going to save that optimized image back to these 2 columns that I mentioned: main image card, main image highlight. So this is the kind of power, I think, of automation integration. If somebody was to submit that image and you were going to have to go and do that by hand, how long would that take you? That's such a pain. So again, if you have a really busy website, then it's just a complete waste of time. So once that's done, Max, just especially for you, there's an error handler there on that HTTP module. because again, if it struggles to do that for whatever reason, I just want to roll back the data to allow it to attempt again at a later stage, so a bit more advanced. And then the last thing I wanted to show you was this little automation that actually happens inside Airtable itself, because again, this is not Integromat now. We're just going to use an Airtable automation. And this is where they may have submitted an image, but we want to refuse it. We're to say, sorry, it's not good enough. If we've tried to optimize it, it won't optimize. Please try again. And all it does is it says, when a record matches particular conditions, it'll open. When the refuse image is flagged, then I want to send an email to that person, and I'm just telling them what's going on. And could you please try again? Here are the image requirements. Please do this. Our team will check, update it on the website, blah, blah, blah. So that's a really nice little automation that is a good use of Airtables. We didn't have to use Airtable. We could have used Integromat, but it was just to show them what we could do. That's about as advanced as I wanted to get, except I just wanted to show you other things that you can do with all of this. This one, for example, is a client who runs this website. So it's refurbished phones in the UK, and it's a total e-commerce solution in Shopify, but they wanted to handle all of their catalog in Airtable and then actually have that data synchronized wherever it needs to go. So if you've ever done e-commerce, you know that that same information needs to go as a feed file to Facebook for ads, to Google, to you name it, right? So rather than having Shopify as the single source of truth, we've got Airtable as the single source of truth. But that means that we do have to get that data up to Shopify and kept in sync. So that's what this kind of scenario does. It creates the product and the variants and handles the images and prices and everything. And then this one here, again, not to go into detail, but this one here then handles what happens when somebody places an order, because this particular client allows you to order from 3 different locations, and 2 of those are drop shipping locations. So they have their own warehouse, but then they have 2 other warehouses. And if the particular item you've bought is a stock item from one of their drop shippers, we need to be able to identify that and then send the order through to that drop shipper. Again, all automated. So this is sort of more advanced, and I'm happy to go into that kind of stuff a little bit more today if people want, but I just kind of wanted to stop there, really. Any questions?
Thanks so much, Glenn. That was awesome. Yeah, Shay was commenting on how pretty this looks, which I agree with. So yeah, that's a worthy reason to actually create it. It's prettiness. So,
Use it. Yeah, it's just make pretty automations.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Well, maybe Glenn, I don't know if you want to stop sharing your screen so people can see you a bit more, and then we can dig in some questions. I had one just to kick us off. And just sometimes I have this question of, should I use Airtable's automations or like something a bit more powerful? Is there any, if both do them, is it just best to keep it in-house, i.e. Airtable, if you're already got your data in there, or was there a reason to do it in something like Integromat so then it can, I don't know, connect up to other things? Yeah, it just an insight into your decision-making process for that would be great.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I would say go to your standard automation layer every time, unless it's something really simple and basic like that example of just firing off an email. And the reason is because, first of all, Airtable will restrict the number of automations you can do, the number of runs. Can't remember the number, but it's quite low. It doesn't give you probably know, Max, I can't recall. And the other reason is if you start to spread out your automations between different platforms, you start to really lose track of what's going on. And when you come back to it after a month or 2 or 6, and you try and figure out what's going on, it's easier if it's all in the one place. And the logic that you use in one automation, as you saw, carries over into every other automation that you do. However you decide to do it, because it really is different ways of doing these things. You you stay consistent, I guess, with that. So that would be my main reason. And the secondary one is that Airtable's automations, it is still really new, and it is missing features that just aren't there, and it makes it harder to do things that you could do easily in something like Integromat or Zapier.
Got you. Yeah, perfect. No, that makes a lot of sense. Awesome. Yeah, anyone else? Just come off mute and ask away. Have we got any questions? Oh, Shay.
Yeah, because I was trying to think about what my question was, and I did have one. Going on there, because I do have an account, but as Tony would know, if it ain't free, I don't do it. So, question is, do you find that iOS works better with Integromat than Zapier or Zapier, whatever it's called? Because I only use iOS stuff, so I don't use Google, so that always messes me up when I try to do things. I know Max and I always talk about that. So, do you think?
So just can you explain a little bit more what you're struggling with? I didn't quite.
Oh my God, I'm always struggling with a stupid calendar. I swear. It's the easiest thing, the most important thing we live with. And I can't get nothing to work with my stupid calendar. So I can't get Airtable to talk to my calendar because Airtable doesn't show up correctly. When Max was doing his thing, I had to get it connected to the Google account that I hate using to then get it transferred to my iCloud calendar, and then it still doesn't show up the way it's supposed to. So it's always my stupid calendar.
Yeah, I have no expertise in that area. I'll be honest with you. I do not work very much with calendars. I really don't. My experience with Google, though, I'm honest, definitely honest. But my experience with Google is whenever you're having to use its services, they make you jump through a lot of hoops. You've probably gone through this, where you have to create some kind of, app or some kind of thing in your account in Google before they'll give you access to YouTube API or the calendar API, and that is painful. That is definitely painful. So I avoid it. I generally haven't had to do a lot of it, I have to say. But yeah, I get that choice.
Okay, never mind.
Max probably knows more than I do about that, like having to handle calendars all the time.
No, don't throw that over to me, Glenn. I have no expertise either.
And he'll sit there and kind of look at me like, really, Shay? The calendar again.
Yeah, blank expressions all over. Yeah,
I think Shay, you can reach out to Andrew for this. Andrew Davidson, I think, for Davison. Sorry, my bad. He does this. He's automated a lot of his stuff with that. I think it's he's done some elaborate work. I've just seen him describing it in one of the events. It's quite elaborate. You should actually just like DM him. He's very helpful. Just like reach out to him with that question.
I'll share his Twitter on the chat.
Thank you.
Andrew's a pro, a real pro.
Yeah.
Cool. Anyone else got any questions for Glenn before we kind of close up the session?
I guess I have a slightly open question, which is I asked it on the last time I delivered this similar talk, was just to generally ask people, is that advanced what we were looking at, or intermediate, or how do people feel about that level of depth in terms of automation and integration? Because I will be putting a course together at some point, and I'm trying to gauge what the different communities and groups feel about this kind of thing.
So I'm an absolute beginner over here. So I was just like a sponge soaking all of this up, and it's at an intermediate level, if I would put it. Because
did you manage to follow? Being into it? Is that even just in terms of the way we're explaining it, because I do realize that some of these are quite complex concepts when you've never come across them before. And I really do want, like with the webhooks thing, I believe it's so important that I will emphasize it again and again, because you just need that in your tool belt.
Yeah, I think it requires one to have that sort of a library of mindsets to process it, because it's not that easily accessible, because it's so use case specific. We've not really tried to bore into it with that depth. when an expert is explaining this, it'll require the audience to be of that level that they can recognize what's being talked about. So
Yes.
as you asked the question of webhooks, and that just like picks up that allows us to be more attentive to it, at that time. So that's just my 2 cents on it. I definitely very understandable. I mean, the stepwise stuff. So that's an A+. Yeah.
Great. Thank you for the feedback.
Could you repeat that initial question again? When you said you're looking at, I was distracted looking for a Max tweet and missed the
That's
beginning
okay.
of that question.
So it's just to ask whether or not people felt that was an advanced level, an intermediate level. Is it understandable? Just because I'm heading towards doing a course or courses, and I might break it down into sort of 3 levels, literally just to go through it, and people can jump in at the level they're at, maybe, or even just work through from the beginning. But I would like to get this right for people, as opposed to just assume,
Oh, okay, yeah. It felt intermediate. If you're looking for some, I don't know if you are part of the Integromat Facebook group that they have, because that's like sometimes the only place you can get like real support from, and from a community. Arrays are like a big thing that I see people. So I don't know if it was arrays, maybe that would make it advanced, because that's the number one thing. And I know that I get like stuck on that. Iterators and arrays are just something like I've watched their tutorials, and I still like, they make it here, look, it's easy. And then I'm like, yeah, no, I can't get this to work at all. So that would maybe push it up into because I do think webhooks are kind of easy, copy paste, you're kind of good. No, I don't, that's just my opinion, but yeah,
that's great, Tony. Yeah, no, I'm aware of the Facebook group. I dip in and out of it. I try and avoid it. The Integromat partners, of which I'm one, we have a Slack workspace which we are in all together, and then we kind of help each other out behind the scenes in there, which I find is more useful than Facebook. But yeah, I hear arrays is one of those things. Again, if you find yourself having to loop through an array, and then you end up further down the tree, and then you've got another array, or you can generally just come at it from a different direction, because they are, when you're working with multiple numbers of bundles and then looping through an array within one bundle, that's like you're looping in a loop, right? And it does get confusing, definitely. And you can end up with this situation where you're multiplying the number of operations that you're running beyond the number of items in an array, because it's kind of doubling up, or sort of like doing, what's it called, a Cartesian product. I think it's actually just blowing up the number of operations, and it can get crazy. So again, if you can avoid them, but sometimes you have to work with.
that's generally what I do.
Yeah,
leave that over there.
I don't use them very often. Yeah, definitely. I don't.
Okay, so as a person who literally just signed in to see if I still had the account active, and I have things that I have not, literally it has 2 things and I don't know what to do. That was advanced, but it was so pretty that I don't really care. And so all I really do need, I need like basic of like, this is what this word means. This is what this word means. This group means this. I need that type of step-by-step type thing. That's just me. And I can never find it online because they're always using the Google products. Once again, I need something that's not pointing to a direct app or anything. I needed to just explain to me what these languages are, the new words that this company has decided to make up out of the thinness of the air. And then I could go, oh my God, that makes sense. This means that. Like if you went to that page that you said was technically a webhook, but it didn't say webhook, I wouldn't have known that was a webhook. My brain would have been like, what the hell is this?
Exactly. And there isn't that. I think people try to avoid being overly complicated, like Outsetter, by calling it a notification and a callback URL. Just call it what everybody else calls it. So I hear you on that one. But there's a lot of trial and error with that. What I think would be good if I did a beginner course, for example, is to actually have that kind of terminology laid out, and especially in the popular areas. And membership is one that I really want to look at as part of this course or series of courses, because membership is so much more complicated than people think it is. Once you get into it and you're dealing with members and subscriptions and dates and money, and it's it's not as easy as just a straight transaction, somebody buying a product from you. This is a relationship that you're nurturing over a period of time, and yeah, it's tricky. So I think that's a good advice. Thanks. I'll remember that.
Yeah, I'd completely agree with Shay on that. Yeah, just kind of jumping from like one set of jargon to the next is tough. So yeah, completely agree. And yeah, thanks for that, Krishna. I'll chuck that over to Glenn to kind of look at after the session. Yeah, more deeply. But cool. It looks like we are close to the hour, so good timing. It's been splendid. Is there any kind of thing you want to leave the group on, Glenn? Any words of wisdom, any kind of plugs or whatever? Just let us know.
No plugs particularly. I think just everybody. I think it's just a little bit of advice, I guess, which is don't give up hope. Keep going. Like every little thing that you learn every day is important. You don't feel it on the day because it's small, and maybe you've had a really frustrating day. But after those days roll by and they build up and they build up and they build up, and then all of a sudden, you're giving a presentation like this because it just happens over time. So be patient, be kind to yourselves. Don't get too stressed about Google and calendars, and yeah, just keep going, because once you get all this stuff under your belt, you literally feel like you could do anything. You do not miss coding. You're just not restricted in any way. You can build whatever you like. So yeah, that's my best advice. I'd stick with Integromat. Zappia's great, but honestly, it's a bit more of a learning curve, but Integromat's awesome. So
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much, Glenn, and I appreciate that subtle marketing for 100 days there. Just keep at it over the 100 days and you'll be fine.
Never even done 100 days, but you're right. It's exactly.
It all just compounds, so it's all good. Anyway, yeah, have a lovely weekend, guys, and yeah, catch you all next week. And thanks so much again, Glenn, for a wonderful session. And I'll be sharing the recording if you want to kind of dip in to bits that you kind of wanted a little bit more of a chance to look at tomorrow. So yeah, cool. Well, have a good one, guys, and thanks again. Yeah.
Thanks for your time.
Bye.
Bye.